Outsourced bankruptcy paralegal, one of the hottest topics right now, a conversation that I hear all the time. Where can I outsource my paralegal service? Heath Isaacs, CaseDriver, is on with me. Heath, you have an interesting perspective. You're a bankruptcy attorney, and you came across a paralegal that was just killing it. And you said, how can I use her to outsource my paralegal service for my own practice, right? For your practice.
Exactly. Other attorneys were watching. I'd go to hearings and cases were getting confirmed very quickly. They became jealous. So they asked, how can we tap into that particular skill?
That was the basis of where CaseDriver started at this point, this outsourced paralegal, because we
Yep.
all know with the bankruptcy community, the quicker you file the case, the quicker you're going to get paid, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Everything moves fast and then money goes in the bank.
Most bankruptcy attorneys just have a paralegal or two paralegals on site. Whether
Yeah.
feast or famine, you're still paying that paralegal.
Yeah. And bankruptcies happen in a cycle. The early part of the year, all the way through the spring is a high point. Summer is a low point. Fall is a high point. And then the holidays are another low point. During those low points, you're still paying for the full salary for that bankruptcy paralegal every 2 weeks, cutting the same size check.
Not to
Without
mention,
bankruptcy revenue,
not to mention benefits, taxes. There's a lot there, right?
the withholding. Well,
Yeah.
the other thing I want to throw in there, and a lot of people forget, is not to mention taxes and withholdings and benefits, but also the downtime.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with my kid who's sick. Can I take tomorrow off? I've
Yeah.
got, which is great. I mean, we all respect that, but I'm also not working completely efficiently today because I've got so much FaceTime that I got to do with my family.
Yeah.
So you get downtime, and the
So,
analysis show that you don't get a lot of efficiency out of it.
I mean, without a question, it can be more efficient if you're piecemealing it. I mean, depending on the size of the firm and different things like that. The downside of having an outsourced person is you can't always train them the way they want, right? Like there are
Yes.
sometimes communication breakdowns. You're not in the same office. Like, how do
Yeah.
you, a CaseDriver, with your outsourced paralegal services, how have you learned to bridge that gap? Because that's a legitimate concern that I hear for people. People come to me and they say, what do you do for outsourced paralegal service? Right. But
Yes.
then they can't, the bridging of the gap's a tough one. How have you figured that out with,
Okay.
with at your firm?
Great question. Because if you have, so we have 9 paralegals that are outsourced and a general manager that's taking care of the workflow. So each one of those paralegals is supervised by the general manager. His name is Isaac, and then me. So the cases get our eyeballs on them, so they're always perfect going out the door. The main problem that somebody who has a salaried paralegal faces is that you're constantly training and you're also paying them when you don't have revenue. So when you use an outsourced service, you're only paying if you actually have bankruptcy revenue, a paying client standing at your door with money on your desk. And if that's taken place, then now you engage that paralegal and then disengage that paralegal until you have the next paying client.
Right. But how do you bridge the gap of like what I've heard
Yeah,
against
yeah.
outsourcing paralegal? People say to me, yeah,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
can't train them, right? They're not there for me when I need them, or there's a communication breakdown. Like, how do you respond to that? Because that's a real valid concern to people who are looking at outsourcing paralegal services. It's like, how do you do that? Because, you know, it's a,
Yeah,
just it's fair concern.
that's a good point, because an attorney wants to have that hands-on management and control over the day-to-day that they have with any employee that they have.
Mhm.
So how do they train them? And so probably the best way to answer your question is when we bring on a new law firm into CaseDriver for the paralegal services, it's actually a long dating series of meetings and massaging the relationship that we have with that law firm before we're actually married.
Mhm.
And so there are a lot of law firms whose business profile just doesn't match the way that we process cases.
Right.
And most do. And so we're selective at the same time that the law firm's being selective. We had a meeting yesterday with an attorney in Northern Texas, and the illustration that we gave is all of our very, very successful law firms that are turning cases from creation to filing at the rate of about 86%. We got firms that are doing that with our processes. This firm wasn't using our processes and engaging in the way that we wanted him to. So we're constantly massaging that even after starting to write cases. But what we demonstrated was that if you follow the case driver processes, where all the way from lead to case number, then you're going to churn those cases much, much faster. And like you said early on, Phil, the key is the quicker you can turn a lead into a case number, the quicker you got money in your bank account.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So let me just fine tune this a little bit. So when you have a client
Yeah,
that is so what you said was the bankruptcy attorney gets to know the paralegal. So I'm assuming you're sending like if I'm a bankruptcy attorney and I do about 10 a month, you're
yeah,
putting me
yeah.
with a paralegal. I'm not getting different paralegals all the time. Is that fair?
Excellent point. I understand your question. So you get that's part of that dating part of the
Right?
relationship
Right?
is you get a paralegal that's assigned to you, and that very paralegal meets with you at least once a week to review all the cases and then talks to you throughout the week as different issues arise with cases, red flags or legal analysis that's needed. But you get one dedicated paralegal.
One
If your
dedicated.
volume is very high, then you might get more than one.
Right.
For example, we have a paralegal in New Jersey. She only serves 2 law firms. That's it. But she meets with them constantly throughout the week with those attorneys. So the relationship that she has with those attorneys is as profound as it would be if she was just down the hall
Right.
from that
Totally.
attorney's
Well,
office.
especially now, I mean, we have paralegals all the time who are no longer in the office anymore. I mean, the office is sort of like not the same as we all know,
Yeah,
right?
even if they're full-time salary,
Even
they're
if they're
still
full-time
remote.
salary, it's hard. And then
Mhm.
if they're full-time salary, you're in Arizona and you get a salaried employee in Colorado. Guess what? You're filing taxes in Colorado because
Yes,
of that
exactly.
employee. I mean, there's more complication. So, what's the biggest problem with outsourcing paralegals? I mean, is it, I mean, obviously you're paying on a per filing basis. And what's that
Yes,
cost on a 7 and a 13? What's the cost on that?
you bring up a good point. And so that anyone who wants to analyze, okay, if I'm a medium-sized firm doing bankruptcies at the rate of about 10 cases per month,
Okay.
then I'm going to multiply what it costs for me to use CaseDriver
Right.
and then determine what that cost me for those 10 cases for the
Right.
month.
Right.
And then I'm going to go over to the what if I had hired somebody analysis.
Hmm.
And am I spending less money for the person I hired,
Yeah.
or am I spending less money by using CaseDriver?
Right.
And before we go into those hard numbers and crunch them, the most important aspect, and we've already kind of touched on this, is if you're working in that salaried paralegal environment, then you are spending money on their salary. So let's say it is
Yeah. Their
$60,000 a
salary,
year.
their benefits, their all the other stuff, right?
And then you're also maintaining all of their equipment. If they are remote, then you're not maintaining an office and a desk and a phone line, but you are maintaining their computer and the software and the systems that are housed on that hardware.
Mhm.
And you're the IT guy keeping that person functional. But you're also managing the HR aspect, the employee relations aspect. And an HR department has an employee relations manager that deals with the discipline and the performance management and coming up short on moving cases or responding sharply to a client, and you're managing that performance, and
Right.
that consumes your time, and we're attorneys, not HR managers. And so CaseDriver takes that burden off, and so we're doing everything to always deliver at the moment that you need it for a particular case, a
Hmm.
very well polished professional, immediately ready paralegal
Right.
to write and manage that case all the way through the 341.
Okay.
And so back to your question, what's the weakness? What
Hmm.
what makes it a possible bad decision to
Hmm.
outsource your paralegal?
Right.
And what we've found is our best customers
Hmm.
are those medium-sized law firms. And there's a law firm in North Carolina, Orcutt,
Define
right?
medium. Define medium. What's medium?
It's going to be at about that 20 to 22 cases per month or less,
Okay.
ideally. And
Okay.
then you're getting the law of diminishing marginal returns starts to say that if I'm doing 30 cases, 35 cases per month, and I'm that high volume bankruptcy practice, then it's probably better if I hire a full-time salaried paralegal.
If they did have someone internally and they grow more, they could always give you overflow, right? I mean, it's not like an exclusive agreement where you have to take every single one, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, very good point. Because if the table can't handle every one of those cases that fall off the table because what they do have as a full-time salaried person can't handle all
Right.
those cases. Maybe it is spring or the fall when you got a high point and that
Yeah.
salaried person can't
I,
handle it.
I I
And we
think the
take the
better
overflow.
I think the better calculus would be what did you do last year, right?
Yeah.
And because that like you mentioned, you're going to have highs and lows and stuff. What you do last year, and then look at whatever salary it is, and then gross it up by 15% for all the extras, right?
Yes.
And that's probably the number. Now, you mentioned you and Isaac look over the cases. What does that mean? Like, what does it mean that you're looking over the cases?
We call it QC, so quality control. And so CaseDriver itself, yeah, it's a paralegal service, but the part that we're most proud of with CaseDriver is the software that we've written. And so we've established from the ground up a software platform that manages these entire case management experience that the attorney has with the paralegal, with the federal court, with all of the data from NDC, for example. It's all captured inside of CaseDriver automatically. So they never step out of the box to get that data.
Mhm.
So probably the easiest way to answer your question is to just describe what the software does.
Yeah.
And so the federal court, the docket, is replicated to a T right on the CaseDriver pages because it gets that feed within seconds of any filing by a creditor, trustee, or a judge. NDC data comes through as well, which is the Chapter 13 payments and what they paid to a creditor and how much they still due to the attorney for their fees, and all of that's captured by CaseDriver.
Okay.
The all of the notes and the interactions, the texts, the emails, the phone calls that our paralegals have with the clients is all captured inside of CaseDriver.
Okay.
Our moments when we need legal analysis from the attorney is captured in CaseDriver and then delivered to the attorney in ways that it makes it easy for them to just use their handheld and continue to manage the case.
Okay.
But the overarching concept is we want the attorney to touch the case only 3 times. And I'm
Okay.
talking Chapter 7. We'll
Okay.
talk what the costs are here in a minute.
Sure.
But for an attorney to follow the motto that we kind of have all over our website and everywhere, which is practice law, we'll do the rest. The
Mm.
practicing of law on a Chapter 7 case is I do the consultation, get them to hire me as a law firm, and I review the case so that it can be signed with
Uh-huh.
the client. And then I go to the 341 meeting. And so that's 3 things. And we add a fourth that doesn't always happen in every case, which is if we're finding red flags as we're putting the case together, let's say they just barely transferred the teenage daughter's car from their name to the teenage daughter's name because she turned 18. Now I want to file bankruptcy 2 months later. That's a problem. And for obvious reasons on the
Yeah,
statement of
right,
financial affairs.
right.
But we sniff that out. We find those red flags and we create what's called legal analysis moments when we're either in a phone call, the paralegal's in a phone call with the attorney, or they catch it on the software that says you've got a legal analysis issue, please resolve it. So
Mhm.
that's the fourth practice of law on a Chapter 7 that we're putting in front of that attorney. Everything else we're taking care of. And so they're not worried about documents and document collection and the intake and
Payment processing. Do you do
yes,
that
and
too?
we can automate that for the attorney. We do turn to the law firms for the main practices of law from the United States trustee's point of view. The law firm needs to be the one that's reviewing the case with the client. And because that question is asked in every 341 meeting, do you remember sitting with your attorney to sign these papers?
Mhm.
And the other is to analyze all of the legal issues that come up in the case, the
Mhm.
movement of assets prior to filing so that become exempt when they weren't otherwise, for example. And then soliciting the money and the fee agreement. Those are
Okay.
all lawyer functions that the U.S. trustee wants the lawyer to perform, not someone for them.
So what do you charge on, let's keep with sevens, right? So what do you
Okay.
charge for a standard seven? The client's gonna the lawyer's gonna get the retainer, send it to you and your paralegal, and the paralegal is gonna run it all the way until the case is done. The attorney's gonna review it, and attorney's gonna do the 341, right? So
Yeah.
what do you charge for that?
Okay. So we're in the neighborhood of $400 to $420 per
Okay.
case.
Okay. So let's
And
just say 410. Let's just say $410,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
$410 per case. What's the average cost for a paralegal?
The cost for a paralegal is
Yeah.
going to be about, if you had a salaried
So if
paralegal,
you had a salaried paralegal, someone salary paralegal, what would that be?
about 60 to $65,000 per year.
Yeah. And
And
yeah, okay. Let's call it 6250. I actually know attorneys that are paying more than that, but let's just call it 6250 to be safe. The reality
yeah,
is you want a rock star paralegal. Like that's the bottom line. You can't go
yeah,
cheap on a paralegal, right?
yep.
So actually, let's just go 65,000 because I think that's in today's day and age, I know attorneys who are paying more than that. So let's say 65,000.
So yeah, that's right around $33 an hour is what that person should be worth.
So that's 159 cases a year.
Hmm.
So 159 cases a year divided by 12 is 13 and a half a month, right?
There you are. You're
That's right,
exactly
right
right
there.
there.
So if you're doing now that does not actually the 65,000 doesn't include the grossing up. If you gross that up with all benefits, et cetera, taxes, filing somewhere else, whatever. If you gross it up by 15%, that's 74,750 divided by
Hmm.
$410. That's 182 cases or 15 a
Yep.
month.
Yep.
So at the
It's about
very,
$6,200 a month. Yeah,
yeah,
$6,200 a month out of your operating budget, a portion of
but
which goes in the paralegal's pocket.
but the thing
Yeah.
is, that's 15 a month as like the break even. And that's assuming you did 15 every single month. In practicality, the reality is you may do more in January or February and less in December and November, which is fine. The attorneys listening to this can unpack this. But 15 a month is sort of like at the break even. But here's the question I have for you is the speed of filing, right? I
Hmm.
talk about speed to filing all the time.
Yeah, I
Right?
love
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of speed to filing. What can we tell the debtor to get them to get their docs in faster? All this stuff, because a lead can can retain and not file for months. It's an
Yes.
absolute waste. The lead cost is sunk. Everything's in it. The attorney's time is sunk, and we're not doing anything, right? So
Yeah.
the speed to filing is a very, very, very important thing. How can you and your paralegals take that burden? I mean, have you done any studying around this where it's like, hey, what are the three things you do to get the speed to filing faster? Like, speak into this because this is a big, big thing. And all of a sudden, so the 15 file is at the break even, not to mention the fact is you're not managing because you're managing, right? You and Isaac
Yeah.
are managing. So what does this look like? Like, how do you speed the filing? How do you increase the speed to filing?
Speed to filing. And I'll tell you what our numbers are, what we like them to be, and then I'll explain how we get there. And so our numbers are 2 weeks. That's what we want to
So that
become
means
the
2 weeks from what to what?
thanks. So the attorney gets a new lead and they get enough money from that client then to put them into the CaseDriver system.
Mhm.
And that turns on our factory lights, the conveyor belts start churning. Once they turn on those lights and schedule that intake meeting, we want to have a case number 2 weeks later. And
Okay.
that's jaw
So,
dropping for most attorneys.
yeah, I mean, okay. So let me just get this straight. So,
Hmm.
client signs a retainer agreement. Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep. And we're not quite into CaseDriver yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Client signs a
Yep.
retainer agreement with the bankruptcy attorney.
Yep.
And then what's the follow-up thing that's set up?
So then the attorney is responsible to collect the money then from that client. And if they
Whatever
want to
they're
collect it,
whatever they're going to do, right? I mean,
yeah, if they're doing,
if they're bifurcating, it's different. But if
yeah,
they're paying full, okay. So if it's a layaway program or the client does not bifurcate, they're just going to put them on
yeah,
whatever collection process, and once they're paid in full, they give the green light to CaseDriver, right?
bingo.
At
There's,
this point,
yeah,
let's just pretend the person came in and paid in full. The
okay,
attorney is not required to collect any docs at this point.
done. Yeah, so great example. Let's do the perfect client example.
Oh.
So not only is the client paying everything in full, but the client is also going to give us documents rapidly. So
Well,
perfect
let's
client.
hope. No, let's hope they do. Let's pretend they're not. They don't have any docs for the attorney. So the
And
attorney, they did come in, they get together their tax refund. Here's $2,000. I want to file a Chapter 7. Attorney
perfect.
signs the retainer
Yeah.
agreement and they
Yeah.
hand them
Yeah.
off the case driver.
Yep.
2 weeks later, file number.
Yeah. 2 weeks later, we've got a case number.
And
Our
how often does that happen as a percentage?
more than half the time.
More than half the time.
And
Okay. What
yeah.
happened to the other half?
Our record is 6 hours from
Six
the moment
hours.
that the attorney hands us a client. They've got a case number 6 hours later
Wow. Okay. And
with a
what,
fully written case. Isaac set that record. It wasn't me.
wow.
But yeah.
Okay. So what happened to the other half of the people?
The other half, it takes on an average of another week or a week and a half. So we're still inside of a month
So
where we get
within
the
a month,
majority.
and this is with the
Yeah.
attorney doing no work. You're writing the petition, you're collecting all the docs, and
Yep.
you're handing it back to the attorney. What's the biggest slowdown?
Documents.
Document, always.
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely.
What's your
Yep.
secret to doc collection?
Two things.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, who was it? I was at NACPA in Washington, D.C., and I had an attorney. He said, I'm a bankruptcy attorney, but really what I am is a document collector. And incidentally, I get case numbers in the bankruptcy courts for my clients
Yeah,
because it's really all about collecting documents. And
always.
if you can manage that, then you've got yourself a streamlined bankruptcy practice.
So what is your secret to doc collection?
The engagement,
Engagement.
client engagement.
And what
So
does that mean? What does that mean in your world?
well, the main way that we engage the clients that's not following in this world of automation, let the client fill in. Do you remember? Well, you may not remember because you weren't practicing law, but in the late 90s, when I was filing cases back then, Best Case came out with this tool called My Case Info.
Mhm.
And it was a link you could send to your client. The client would answer a series of questions, putting in the answers to those questions. You know, the age of your kids, how many kids do you have, how much do you make, where have you worked, how long do you work there, and all of those answers then came back to me, and I could hit a button and pay a fee back to Stretto, well, Best Case at the time. And if I like the data, then I hit a button and it imports right into my software. Wow, I thought it was better than indoor plumbing. And
Yeah,
so I signed up for it.
right.
And what I ended up doing was rewriting all the answers because they'd say, oh, my daughter had tonsillitis, or they'd write it all in caps, or they'd misspell. And it just wasn't data I could use. I had to rewrite
Yeah.
the case anyway. We still had the same kind of tool that's being promoted today with technology where they're sending out packets to the client. So fill this packet out. As soon as you're done with that packet, then we'll import that data and we can put it right into the software.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like any of those approaches back in the 90s and today either. So what we do, the most important thing, and back to the answer that I gave, which is engagement, that prompts a client to send documents quickly. The attorney, when they put that case into CaseDriver, is going to schedule that client for what we call a CIM, client intake meeting. It's an hour-long meeting,
Mhm.
and it's conducted by the paralegal that's been assigned to that attorney. So the paralegal, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's later that same day, the paralegal will then meet with the client for an hour. During that hour, they're going to do some pretty remarkable things.
Mhm.
Inside of 60 minutes, they're going to get 3 different signatures on 3 different forms from the client. They're also going to send them a portal where they can start uploading documents with a concise list
This is your
of what they've done.
paralegal meeting with the debtor, the client.
Our paralegal meeting with the attorney's new client. Yep, you got it.
Great.
And so what we do is a full-on interview to get the client information.
So your secret to document collection is just simply you need to engage more and more. And frankly, I appreciate that
Yeah.
comment. And the reason why is everyone can talk about automation. I haven't, it's hard. Like
Hmm.
it's hard. And what you have to do is pick up the phone and you need someone on the phone. You need someone, hey,
Yeah.
we're missing one payment stub. You got to get this to me today. And what I've learned with
Yeah.
debtors,
I
you
like
got to
that.
give deadlines,
Yeah.
like deadlines. Have you ever tried doing something like, hey, on that first conversation, hey, if you get us all your documents by Y, I'm going to send you a $25 Amazon gift card. Like
Oh,
incentivize the
I like that.
debtor.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because think about it. If
Yeah.
you could get where CaseDriver is known as 2 weeks, we take it from signed retainer to case number in 2 weeks in 80% of the cases.
Hmm.
It's a game changer. We need to motivate the debtor in some way That's different than just, hey, can you do it? Yes, I'm busy. The problem is debtors, their cars are breaking down. They don't know what to do. They're working 50 hours this week. It's just hard. We
Yeah.
got to motivate them in a different way, right?
And
Anyways,
you just described our regular day,
I know
which
that's the
is, you
problem. This is what we all deal with in the bankruptcy market. So, is there anything else you want to talk about outsourcing paralegals? We did the numbers where it makes sense. I mean, where it's a no-brainer. Um,
yeah.
what else? Anything else you want to say?
Well, the that intake meeting, we've got signatures they sign on their phone right during that meeting, and immediately the attorney's insulated because now you have a signed intake form with all those answers to questions about cars, years of cars, jobs, businesses they've owned. And then we do a budget and assets form that they sign for unusual assets and unusual expenses on Schedule J. And then the statement of financial affairs, all signed immediately inside of 60 minutes. And then we do, and I'm glad you mentioned this because I would have otherwise forgotten, but we start collecting those documents before that meeting. If there's a 2 or 3 day buffer, we're sending them emails and texts and calling them
Yeah.
saying, hey, we're about to call you for this big fat meeting. In the meantime, I just sent you a portal upload docs. And so we're in that document moment right from the moment the case is given to us. And then after this is the part that I enjoyed what you said, is setting incentive deadlines.
Hmm.
So we set another appointment with them right after that intake meeting.
Hmm.
And
I see.
we'd say, all right, 1 week from today, we're going to meet again. We're going to go over everything that you will have already sent me and how the case is coming together. It may not be the moment that we're done, but it's going to be a moment when we move things rapidly forward.
Yeah.
And they don't want to show up to that meeting without their homework being done.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's human nature.
yeah, I mean, no one wants to disappoint someone. And at the same time, these are debtors and debtors need to be guided. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We're all dealing with it. We this is just the practicality of it, but that's okay. It's just
Yeah.
part of the game we're in.
One other comment I wanted to throw in
Yeah.
there, and you made a good point. 5 years ago, remote was outside of anybody's realm of practicality. But now it is. Not only are the attorneys comfortable with remote paralegals that are dedicated to them, they get the same person all the time, but clients are comfortable with remote attorneys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And
Without a question, no one's, I mean, the number of people who are seeing people in person, I mean, it's
yeah,
dramatically shifted. The marketplace is completely shifted on that.
yeah, I'm an idiot because I'm still paying a lease on physical office space.
Well, a lot of people
And
sign long leases. That's the reality. I get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the lights rarely get turned on. Yeah.
Heath Isaacs, CaseDriver. Heath, thanks for information. Information on CaseDriver will be below, and we'll be doing more of these in the future.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks.